Hey everyone, it's Rob. We want to continue our look at the seven seals, in particular the first four seals. In order to understand what John's message was to the church then, what his message is to the church today, and how it applies to us as we get into all these issues of war and immigration and conflict and politics. Now, what I've argued so far is that the first four seals and the seven seals as a whole indicate a delay. The contents of the scroll will not be revealed immediately. And I've argued that for two reasons, one of which I mentioned in the last video, and that is the parallel between Mark 13, Matthew 24, and Luke 21. Clearly in that message of Jesus to the disciples, Jesus was telling his disciples that Jerusalem and the temple is going to be destroyed, but not right away. Instead, there'll be false Christs and false prophets, paralleling the first seal. There's going to be war, paralleling the second seal. There's going to be famines, paralleling the third seal. There's going to be death, paralleling the fourth seal. These things are going to happen, and what he indicates is things are going to go on as normal for a time. It's not going to happen right away. Then he says in the Gospel of Luke, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you got to get out of, then you know Jerusalem's about to be destroyed. So the first indication that we have that the book of Revelation, the seven seals are telling us that there's going to be a delay is simply the fact that it's paralleling Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. And Jesus' sermon then, or his speech then, was it's going to be a delay. The other indication is found by looking at the seventh seal. And I mentioned this in the first video, but let's go ahead and look at it now. When the Lamb broke the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Verse 2, and I saw seven angels who stand before God, and seven trumpets were given to them. We're like, wait a minute. Now the scroll's open. I mean, all seven seals are broken. The scroll's open. We should be able to read its contents. We know the contents are important because John was crying because no one was found worthy to open it. What's on the scroll? We're not told. In fact, what happens next is the first angel sounded, the second angel sounded, the third angel. The seven trumpets are sounded. It's not until we get to chapter 10, there's another strong angel. Remember, we met him in chapter 5. He had in his hand a little book, a scroll, which was open. And then we're going to find out what the contents are. John's going to eat the scroll. He's going to be told, now go prophesy. Go tell everyone what the contents of the scroll are. And that's what Revelation chapter 11 is about. We have a couple of indications that the seven seals are actually indicating a delay. The contents of the scroll are not going to be revealed right away. The parallel with Jesus' sermon in the Gospels, as well as the nature of what happens in Revelation, tells us this. And what it seems to indicate then is that the powers that be will remain for a time. There'll be false prophets and false Christs. There'll be wars. There'll be famines. There'll be death. This is what happens when the nations remain in power. In Mark 13, Matthew 24, and Luke 21, Jesus wasn't revealing anything special. Hey guys, there's going to be earthquakes. Like, oh, no way. Earthquakes always happen. Wars always happen. Famine always happens. He's not describing anything special. He's saying this is what's going to happen. The powers that be are going to remain for a little time. Now, the powers that be, however, are also going to cause suffering for God's people. That's why, as we mentioned previously, God's people cry out, how long, O Lord? How long? Now, there's a couple more things to point out that I think are really, really important. Now, as we look at the seven seals, we find something else that's interesting. The first seal is a rider on a white horse. Now, what I've been saying is that the first seal, a rider on a white horse, actually represents false prophets and false Christs. Now, this is evident from the parallels in Mark 13, Matthew 24, and Luke 21. Mark 13, the very first thing Jesus says is, see to it that no one misleads you. It's a rider on a white horse. And many will come in my name saying, I am he, and will mislead many. What's interesting, however, as we go back to Revelation chapter 6, is that a white horse occurs only 2 times in the entire book of Revelation. The second occurrence is in Revelation chapter 19, and it's a description of the second coming of Jesus. Verse 11 of Revelation 19 says, I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse. He who sat on us called faithful and true, and in righteousness he judges and wages war. This is Jesus. There's no question about it. It's Jesus. He's the King of kings and the Lord of lords. This is Christ. And so that leads some to believe that the rider on the white horse in Revelation chapter 6 is actually Christ. Now, this is going to be another important thing that's going to happen in the book of Revelation. John's going to use words a certain number of times. The meaning of the numbers is often very, very significant. We'll look at an example in just a minute. The other thing that he does, however, is he will also use a word or a phrase in one place and then in another place, and only in those 2 places to link the passages together. So you can make a good argument. White horse occurs only in Revelation 6, only in Revelation 19. Revelation 19, we know it's Jesus, therefore it's Jesus in Revelation 6 as well. But another feature that John does is he will actually use descriptions of evil entities in ways that sound like Jesus or sound like God the Father in order to let us know that evil entities are deceiving. So let me give you an example. We went back to chapter 5 and we talked about how the Lamb was worthy to open the scroll because he was slain. And if you look over here in the Greek, I know you might not be able to read Greek, it says, as if he was slain. What I want us to notice is actually this phrase occurs in an identical form in Revelation chapter 13, describing the beast from the sea. So it says, I saw a beast coming up from the sea. He had 10 horns and 7 heads. 7's the number for God. So interesting that this evil entity, it's the beast, who's empowered by the dragon, which we know is Satan, has 7 heads. He's using numbers to depict something evil so that actually it appears like it's actually good, but we know it's actually evil. He said, the beast that I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth was like the mouth of a lion. That's interesting. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain. Now notice the Greek phrase over here on the left-hand side. It's exactly the same form. This expression occurs twice in the entire book of Revelation. And in the first instance, it's Jesus, the Lamb, that was slain. In the second, it's the beast. So I think that when we go back to Revelation chapter 6, this rider on a white horse, it's Christ. And here's the next thing that's very important for us to understand. That if this is describing what happens while God delays, what happens while empires remain in power, empires bring deception first. Then they create wars, which cause famines, which results in death. Now, why do I think this is so important? Because I think what Revelation chapter 6 is telling us is that while God delays his return, empires stay in power, but empires do this. They first bring deception. They lie. Then they bring war, which results in famine, which creates death. This is the nature of empires. We're going to find in Revelation 13 that we'll look at in several videos from now. They're empowered by the dragon, who is the deceiver by name. And their lies are such that it even leads God's people astray. This is the key point. We think that the Antichrist, or whatever that might mean, is something out there. Deception is in the world. We aren't deceived. We're in the... But Jesus' word to the disciples was, see to it that no one misleads you. And as we go through the first 4 seals, we realize God's people are the ones suffering also. Suffering how? They're the ones that are being deceived as well. Now let's go back to Mark 13 for just a second. In Mark 13, it says this, false Christs and false prophets will arise and will show signs and wonders in order to lead astray, if possible, the elect. So what does this mean for us? It indicates that we, God's people, are also subject to being deceived. The beast will come and deceive us. The whole idea of alligator Alcatraz, it just sounds inhumane. Oh, it's not inhumane. I mean, they would never do that. They have to round up these immigrants. They're violent criminals. They're actually not violent criminals. Only 8% of the immigrants that have been arrested and detained and deported have actually had a criminal record. Oh, but they all have a criminal record because they came to our country illegally. That's not what they're telling us. They're telling us that they're criminals because they've done violent crimes. We got to get them out of our country. Could it be that the empire is deceiving us so that we go along with what it's doing? We need to speak up for the human rights and the human dignity of everyone. This is the message of Revelation. Be careful that no one misleads you. Now, the next question becomes, well, how do we speak up? What does that look like? So this brings us back to Revelation chapter 5 for another really important point. I mentioned to you that John uses words a certain number of times, and that often we have to count the number of times a word occurs or a phrase occurs. It's done throughout the book of Revelation. It's abundant amount of times he does this. Hundreds of times he does this. It's clear that this was intentional. What's interesting is that when John describes Jesus, he first hears that the Lion from the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has overcome, so as to open the book. But when he looks, he doesn't see a lion. He sees a lamb standing as if slain. Now, this is actually really important. If we count the number of times the word lion occurs and the number of times lamb occurs, something very interesting. The word lion occurs 6 times in the book of Revelation. That's surprising. You'd think that would be 7 or 12 or something like that. Only once for Jesus. The word lamb occurs 29 times in the book of Revelation. 28 times for Jesus. First thing to notice, he's called the lion once. He's called the lamb 28 times. John's preferred title for Jesus is the Lamb. Second thing to notice, Lamb occurs 28 times, 7 times 4. 7 is clearly used throughout the book of Revelation for perfection, completion, totality. 7 names for God. The Lord God Almighty occurs 7 times in the book of Revelation. 4 is used throughout the book of Revelation and even the biblical text to refer to completion or perfection or totality with regards to creation. There's 4 corners of the earth, 4 winds. We'll see nation, tribe, people, and tongue. Nation, tribe, people, and tongue. Fourfold. Those titles occur 7 times in the book of Revelation. What's actually really interesting is they never occur in the same order. But he's only called the lion once. What's interesting is that the word lion applies to, well, sometimes to angelic beings, but it's also applied to the beast. Look, the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like those of a bear. This is Revelation 13, verse 2. And his mouth was like the mouth of a lion. Evil, the beast, empire, is depicted in Christ-like language. But Jesus is only a lion once. He's a lamb 28 times. Oh, by the way, the 29th occurrence of lamb is in the description of the second beast. I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke like a dragon. Now, I know this video went a little bit longer, but what are we seeing so far? Revelation describes that there's going to be a delay in the return of Christ. During that delay, the empires remain in power. Empires deceive. They actually look Christ-like to deceive even the elect, if that were possible. We need to recognize that deception comes inside the church, that we could be deceived, so that we could support war and violence and famine and bloodshed and genocide and ethnic cleansing. This is what the empire does. But we are the means to which God brings the redemption and the restoration. We'll see this as we proceed through the book of Revelation. But that redemption and restoration comes when we faithfully lay down our lives. Sorry, you got to rest for a little while longer until the number of your brothers and fellow servants who are to be killed as you are has been fulfilled. I think this speaks a lot to what the church should be doing these days when it comes to a lot of these different issues. Again, we want to encourage you to subscribe to the Determined Truth YouTube page. Search for the playlist Revelation Revealed to get all the videos in this particular series. Of course, we'll be doing a series in the entire book of Revelation later on. Look for those videos as well. If you subscribe, you can be alerted whenever a new video drops. We'll try to drop these videos every Wednesday if possible. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comment sections below. Make sure you like the video and subscribe. And if you really want to, you can send me an email at rob@determinedtruth.com with any questions or comments. Please be nice. And I'll do my best to respond to them in time. If not, I'll respond to them on a future video.